Greetings all, welcome to Everything Borrowed, where we sit down to share stories and have conversations with entrepreneurs to artists and everyone in between. Today's episode is powered by Blake's Hard Cider, 100% fresh pressed, all natural and gluten-free, straight from our family's 75-year-old farm in Southeast Michigan. Find us in your local grocer or have Blake's direct ship to your home by visiting blakestore.com. Use promo code EverythingBorrowed to receive 10% off your first order. Must be 21 years of age. Please enjoy mindfully. Today we're getting to know the CEO of Coolperx, Cysewski, and diving deeper into the world of sustainable business. Coolperx is the world's first and only B2B social purpose marketing agency. So what does that mean? And how did Lou get customers like Google, Microsoft, T-Mobile, and others on board with such an innovative approach? Have to listen to find out.
Hi, Lou.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Pretty good.
Thanks for jumping on with us.
Yeah, no problem.
So you're out in Bellevue, Washington, right? Did I read that right?
Yep.
Close. How far away from Apple Country proper?
Just a couple of hours, probably 2 hours. We drive through there constantly.
You know, obviously your background, your history, I was super fascinated in the fact that you and I both, on my Instagram feed, I have conscious creator. I saw that you actually, identify with that. And I was just curious if you could give us a little bit of your kind of origin, the genesis of that philosophy. Obviously that embodies, your business and everything you do and just where that came from.
Yeah, no, I mean, as a child of the military, I had to travel a lot, right? And so the things that I kept in my household and kept on me, it was a very small selection of things. I chose to, I do have a philosophy of buy less, buy better, right? Like, so if I'm going to keep it, if I'm going to spend the money on it, if I'm going to have to pack it and travel with it, I want it to be something that I actually do want to keep. And I took that into my philosophy in business as well. When I first found out about the promotional industry, I had seen the results of bad promo. However, I didn't really know about the industry. It's like this invisible industry that kind of just hovers around, but it's a really large industry. It's $30 billion. And that's just a segment of the total industry, which includes all non-cash incentives. So if you're sending your employees or your clients gifts like wine or sending them on a trip or something like that, or anything non-cash, right? Like if you get a giant TV for your 10th anniversary working somewhere, that's a $125 billion industry. So in this huge, invisible industry in the background, I found out about it because when I met my husband, who was working in that industry.
So many things within, entrepreneurship and just business in general, you can go down the rabbit hole and you'd think you know about it, but then you really don't. And I mean, I would have never guessed it was that big of an industry.
When people would call in and ask for certain things, I'm like, well, what is the end goal, right? Like, are you just trying to slap a logo on something and give it out indiscriminately? Like, that's not going to work. Like, that's not going to buy my business. It's not even going to keep me there as an employee. Working as a nurse in the past, we'd get stupid things like tumblers or I don't need another water bottle, right? Like, as a nurse, I really want you to just maybe send me on a massage or hire somebody, right, to take a shift away from me. But better scrub, something invest in the people rather than just here, let me just do something habitually.
Yeah, and that's one thing I think you made a good point is, this as terrible as this year has been and tumultuous and trying for so many people, I do think it's reset, kind of some paradigms for how we do things, how we gift, how we, celebrate together. And obviously we want to be close together, but, I have to imagine for your industry, there's a real opportunity to kind of expand on what it is to think about someone at the, the gift giving time of year and what that could mean as a meaningful, gesture as opposed to something that's kind of a space filler. Talk a little bit about, what it is you guys, first initially offered and how you're kind of, expanding the way in which we think about promotion and gifting to people, because I know we have 900 employees at our business, and that's always a challenge. I mean, the most meaningful thing I think we give out, we give some TVs and some some iPads, and those are great. People love them. Some trips, but the holiday ham seems to be the big winner because it's something they can use and actually like feed their families with.
A lot of times when I had approached people at the beginning, they really had no clients. When I approached clients at the beginning of my business, they really had no frame of reference to what I was talking about. It really was this habitual, like, all right, my boss told me I needed to get, 40 hoodies, or I need to get like 200 fidget spinners, right? And I'm just like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to sell that to you.
Sure.
I have industry data that says that this will last max 3 months with anybody. Only 30% of those people are going to take it. So if you spend $5,000 with me today, how much of that, $4,500 is going to end up in the trash, right? And that's not something any business really wants.
Sure.
So moving through that, like really trying to figure out how to frame our business because it is so different. And then speak to our ideal client. It was a really big challenge at first because sustainability has no real definition, right? Everybody thinks anything reusable is sustainable. When we're doing research on the lifetime carbon analysis of things like tote bags, right? So like those stupid non-woven tote bags that everybody wants to give out, whether it's, at the grocery store or whatever else, they have a high carbon footprint to create in the first place. Secondly, everybody has one. Most people won't even pick it up if you're giving something like that away because they already have plenty of them.
Right.
And third, they aren't really that sanitary. You can't wash them. You can't reuse them very well. So then, like on top of them being not as functional as everybody wants to, they do have a high carbon footprint from creation. And then they're not recyclable. You have to burn them basically. They end up in landfills. And so teaching people to give gifts that, or even giveaways like with branded merchandise where it's not junk, was something that the first year in business, which was last year, we were only in business for about less than a year before the pandemic. Mm-hmm. That was really challenging. So we just kind of started speaking mostly to the higher level decision makers, right? Sure. But it took a long time to figure out how to even get to them because you have like 10 layers of gatekeepers and they don't want any of this. But I work with Microsoft and Google and Salesforce and all these companies that have these huge forward-facing sustainability missions, and their leadership says, hey, you have to have your scope 1, 2, and 3 carbon analysis, and you have to report this.
Well, that's the other thing that I was going to say is like, speaking for myself and other entrepreneurs, I think we all want to be more sustainable and environmentally conscious and make the right decisions, as it relates to that. But, there's, people like you really have the opportunity, I think, to help educate us. Talk a little bit about, what your life's been like and how you've been adapting as a business and kind of, where you guys are at now from where you started.
Yeah, well, we adapted really nicely because we were always set up to be remote. We initially started with an office and realized that we really didn't need one. Most of the time, like salespeople are, just talking to clients all the time and they don't need an office to come to. But we were set up from the beginning to grow without so much overhead. I had a goal to hire parents, really, but anyone who might not be really into working in an office for whatever reason, or has a hard time working in an office, because I know there's so much talent out there, and there are so many people who actually want jobs and they want to be a part of something that's taking off and growing and being a part of a startup. especially one that's very, very mission based like mine. I mean, it's definitely grown. Like I said, we did have that start out like, what are you? Who are you? What are you going to do? And then this year, everybody's like, oh, I don't actually want to spend my money on something that's going to get thrown away.
Sure.
Right? Or I want to do something more meaningful and make this person actually feel good because I'm seeing them on the screen like bummed out, or I'm seeing how stressed they are in their own house, right? There's not that veil of like, oh, I'm in the office, I'm going to pretend that everything's okay.
Sure.
And so there's that relationship that's happening right now, sort of an intimacy, right?
Yeah.
And if you're giving an item that really says, oh, I noticed this one thing in your house, in your life that, can make a difference. And, there's a misconception that you can't do that bulk, right? I tend to say, like there's a difference between, so you have 900 people, you don't want to get all 900 people the same thing because there are different types of people in there, right? You have your outdoors people, which about 30% of the population goes camping. And then you have your, like your people who really love TV, and you have all of these different personality types, and you can cater to those, right? Within a 900 person organization and buy in bulk in that way. And we tend to really teach people how to do that. And it's really starting to catch on, and people are valuing that a lot.
This pandemic's made us all more conscious of ourselves and probably our employees and work-life balance and family lives and all these sorts of things. And I feel like, an evolution of a business or an entrepreneur in any capacity is probably to take a different look at, it's not a one size fits all in any capacity, for the gifts you give to the work structure that's set up at the office, the 9 to 5. I mean, people have different paces, different gears, and different ways in which they operate best. And I think that, kind of curtailing a more specific approach to the individual, I think is probably a more tailored for you, kind of approach is probably the way of the future. And obviously I think that's why your business is successful and why you've been evolving. So, when you talk about your main product offerings, what is your number one SKU? What is the number one product?
It's not necessarily one SKU. We do a lot of data trend analysis on what people actually want. So our first line of defense when it comes to sustainability itself is how much somebody will want this, and then how long they'll actually keep it, right? Like the average promotional product, there's really no data that shows that people keep it longer than a year, right? However, if you're buying something that somebody can't get for themselves at Nordstrom because it's sold out, it's pretty amazing that several of our products were sold by us before they even launched. Right. So those types of products that somebody will get and just love, absolutely love, are amazing. Buyers right now, they're looking at like our catalog and stuff like that on a screen in their house, and through their own filters, they're able to see, oh, this won't fit, this won't work, this won't do anything when it comes to the typical promo product. But because we shop almost entirely outside of the promotional product industry, we do go to CES, we go to gift shows in New York and Paris where the retail brands are out and displaying their products, and then people like Nordstrom are there shopping as well.
When you look at your goals for your company, 3 to 5 years from now, what is, where do you see, your company going, and how do you kind of evolve?
Our mission is really important, whether somebody actually has a sustainability mission themselves or they're working with a company like Google or Microsoft, and they're going to have to start reporting their carbon footprint. They need to be working with a company like ours who can help them do that.
For companies that don't have a sustainability mission yet, but they're interested and they want to take on that initiative, what are some resources, or how do people go about it? I think it starts with a will and a want and being conscious of it all.
Sustainability, like I said, is really hard thing to fully define. And then what we do is eliminate our own carbon footprint. So we had to go back and figure out the tiny, tiny, tiny little numbers that come with everything that we do, from our business operations to, I don't even know, to our like personal flights, right? Like I know the difference in the carbon footprint between like first class and coach, and like, oh, well, I can't afford to offset the first class one, let alone the tickets right now. But we did just a bunch of research. So most of the information is really hard to get, and it's very expensive because it's catered to the educational system right now. So if you want to get a database of what the carbon footprint is on the average product, you have to pay like $5,000 for it. It's very expensive to buy into those systems. Whereas if you're a college student, you know, a lot of times you can log in and figure that out.
Sure.
But for the average person, one of the things that we're doing is, as we're finding out this, as we're paying by order, right? So somebody, you know, wants a jacket order, we're buying this data for a research company that actually will go through and research whether the material extract, what the carbon footprint is on that, the manufacturing process, the sewing process, the transportation, all of it, until it gets into my hands, really, or into the hands of any retailer. Mm-hmm. And then there's another study that will talk about the end of life cycle. So whether or not, like, what the carbon footprint of the product is if it's recycled, and then the carbon footprint if it's in a landfill, burned, you know, depending on what can even happen with it at the end. So what we're doing is taking that data as we get it, and we're going to start publishing it, so the average person does know their own personal carbon footprint. It is hard to find for the average person, and I usually tell people the best way to go about it is just consume less, right? Like, do you really need this extra thing, or do you really, you know, like, make sure that you really do want it, right? Like, we don't want to make sustainability like something where you're living out in the woods in a tent, right? Like, that's different. That's a whole different level of consciousness. Right. That's not sustainable for the majority of the people I talk to. So we do talk about like spending more on local crafted items. So, you know, somebody in Michigan would buy your hard cider versus something made in Washington, right? Like we have Seattle.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of them. Yeah.
I love really, really dry cider.
Yeah. Well, you're in the good spot for it. The Pacific Northwest is you know, is far and above probably the cider mecca. If I'm looking to buy gifts, what are the things in which I can do, you know, to kind of think more sustainably about that? And how does that mission kind of map onto every business owner? And how do we explore that a little bit more, and kind of integrate that into our, you know, our overall business?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can say as far as a business owner, something that you can apply as a blanket rule of thumb would be to look at when you habitually buy, right? So if you're just doing like the holiday gift, all of these things, you could probably stop, right? Like these habitual gifts. I mean, ham is great. It's a much better option than a lot of what I've come to contact with. But, you know, like you don't need to. Forming those relationships with your employees and making them feel really good along the way will do so much better for your business than to be like, oh, holiday gifts, you know, here's your box of pears and chocolates or whatever else, you know, that people send, or cookies or whatever else. And it's like they fall flat. Mm-hmm. It's not, and then not only that, like it's lost in the shuffle of the holidays. So I generally will tell people, do something special for the team, form these relationships, and then buy off holiday season. Like get something in February when everybody is like depressed about Valentine's Day, right? Like do something where somebody will remember that.
Sure.
not coming in the time where, their grandma's fruitcake is showing up at the door next to your box of fruit, like.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing in the holidays, being a fruit farmer, I guess I appreciate it, but you get inundated with so much fruit. You're like, what the hell am I going to do with all this fruit? So, kind of, jumping back into a little bit, who have your mentors been, or how did you go from, growing up in the military to really understanding how to start a business? I mean, I luckily had my dad and uncle who kind of were my mentors, and I had trusty Google to figure out how to do certain things in business. And I hate to dumb it down that simply, but that was kind of my origin story. But how did you have someone who took you under their wing? Was it all self-taught?
I mean, I went to school for nursing and public health, so there is one level of what I do that it's really related to what I went to school for, right? Like a lot of education. I learned how to talk to people in a way that they can understand and comply with something that's better for them.
Right.
Right. And then also the relationship aspect of it, where, like somebody that's really not doing well health-wise, building that rapport with a patient, I get to use that in business. But when it comes to actual mentorship, it was a long time before I found people who were in business, who wanted to help, who actually had the experience and the knowledge that I needed. Most of it, I mean, I have this running joke in my family that nobody's allowed to tell me their goals, because the next time I see them, I will always be like, so how's that going? Where is it? Like, where are you at this? My husband hadn't really ever traveled and now has been to several different countries. And, we're learning French and he wanted to play tennis. So now we're playing tennis, and like all of these different things, like you tell me something and we just go do it. And that's how I approach all aspects of life. And that's how I approached my business as well. I mean, mentors are great bumpers. I like bowling alley, right? They're great for that, but really ultimately the business is your baby. It's your passion, right? And so like somebody might have some insight, but I don't love advice, right? Like you can tell me what has worked for you and I will tell you what has worked for me, type of sharing.
Sure.
Ultimately, getting to your end goal, if you want it, you will get it.
Right.
Usually, like I think that's true all around life. If you want something, you'll figure it out. It's just how much you apply your attention to.
Right. So what is Lou's end goal? What's the end goal? What's the end state? And when are we getting there?
My business?
Yeah.
I have a huge goal of offsetting 1 billion pounds of carbon. And so it is a lot. So every time we go, we get an order, we offset the carbon footprint through our solar initiative. I haven't even talked about that, so I don't know if you know about that.
No, I was hoping we'd get to that. So please.
Okay, so we went through a whole cycle of trying to figure out how to offset our carbon footprint, like whether it's trees. There's a lot of European companies who are ahead of the US when it comes to carbon offsetting and your carbon footprint, stuff like that. And they have different programs. One of them was a clean water program that we chose in Cambodia, where, like we help a village get clean water in a more sustainable way. Mm-hmm. But these things aren't really that trackable. I can't plant a tree and know that I'm offsetting the carbon for all of my jackets in this one order, right? But we found a company called Clearloop in Nashville who are building solar panels, and we sponsor these solar panels. We pay for these solar panels to be built to offset the carbon footprint of our own internal usage, our own carbon footprint, and then that of every single order. So the way they do that, or the way we measure that, is we know how much fossil fuels are burned because of, long standing data on that energy grid. And the reason why it's in the South is because it's the dirtiest energy grids in the US,
Sure.
right? The most amount of fossil fuels. So they can do have the biggest impact there by building out solar panels. So as my orders come in, we're building more and more solar panels. That clean energy gets put into the power grid and then is replacing fossil fuels.
Like, how do I get some perspective on what 1 billion pounds is?
It's $5 billion in sales. It's 6% of my industry.
That's a lot of sales. Well, I don't think I think you got to dream big, and I think so only, even at 1 billion pounds, it's still only 6% of the entire industry.
Well, the idea is if people are reducing what they're buying and reducing the promo products, eventually the promo products will elevate, or people will start buying from companies who are more intentional that might not be in the promotional products industry. And then those people will be our competitors. And that's my goal, right? Is that the industry shifts to people who are buying better products.
There's a little bit of an awakening, or kind of a consumer consciousness that's going on, just with where things come from and how we get them, and how they impact our lives. Where before it's so easy just to throw away and get a new, and and I think to some degree that really kind of dumbs down the consumer and kind of the ways in which we think about what we buy, what we purchase, and what we do.
Yeah, I think overall consumerism will shift, and some industries will fall because of it. Price is still the number one decision marker when it comes to products that people buy, and sustainability is seventh. So, and I know that a lot of that has to do with the fact that people don't know how to integrate this into their lives, right? Like the minute we stopped buying Ziploc bags, I mean, granted, I buy like one box every 3 years.
That was a big thing in my house with my wife. She stopped buying Ziploc bags, and I had, and I'm all about sustainability, but I had a real issue because I had the ones, like the reusable ones with the clamp, and I didn't know how to use them, and I was I was pissed that it was inconvenient. But I think that's part of the thing you're talking about, is getting over some of the inconvenience to have to wash the thing after you use it, and there's a little bit of that convenience that I think we've just gotten so, I don't know, lazy or used to, just being able to throw away a new, not have to throw it in the dishwasher. But yeah, we did that, and then my wife got rid of paper towel. My wife got rid of paper towel, and I was like, come on, kind of. We have dogs. We have 3 dogs. We need some paper towel around the house. And so it's just interesting as you try to shift to those things. Just even people who are trying to be conscious, it's like, wow, it's not as easy always because we've made things so easy.
Yeah. Convenience is huge. It says a lot, right? But overall, you do tend to get used to it. If you just all of a sudden make that decision, oh, I'm no longer using paper towels. I don't use paper towels, mostly because I know how much water is used when they're actually making the paper towel. Right. So I'm just this, I don't know, this seems crazy. But yeah, paper towels are something we did get rid of. And the moment we did it, we just kind of shifted to okay with having dirty rags,
right,
washing them.
Oh, that's funny. What are some other things you think that from a household sustainability, what are other things that we could let go of a little bit in a sustainable kind of thought process, just at our home life? What else do I have around here that I probably should be moving on?
With the theme of this podcast, right, is how much can you borrow, right? Can you borrow books from the library? Can you, be in a neighborhood potluck group where you're okay, well, I made extra food today. I'm going to give it to my neighbor. We're going to do some kind of household split where I don't end up with leftovers because I know my family won't eat that or something like that.
Sure.
I think those are big ones, but ultimately it's really just where you spend your money. Like if you're prioritizing price and you don't care price and convenience and you're just throwing it in your shopping bag, then nothing's ever going to change. But if you're actually making this like conscious effort to be like, oh, actually I want this because I know that it was made without slave labor, right? Or it was made by the neighborhood, grown in the farm next door. Like we've always gone shopping at the farmers market because, well, it's fresher produce, but it's enjoyable. It's an enjoyable experience, and it brought shopping, like grocery shopping, actually
I think
from a mundane act to fun.
I think the one thing that the commercialization of everything is kind of hurt is, kind of the sense of community and connection that you used to get around shopping at the town square or, that sort of thing where you felt connected because you were having, Farmer John's chicken and, whatever, and so-and-so's produce. And you just felt like you knew the person that was growing it. There was a level of trust there. And like that kind of community of consumerism was kind of tied. And now it's become such an arm's length transaction. We've kind of lost the connection of kind of the purchase, the intent of the purchase, which was really just to share value and to share, community and experience. So I do think that this pandemic has kind of, reinvigorated a little bit of that thinking, and that hopefully could be, one of the silver linings.
Totally. I know. We go to the farmer's market and I know the guy who has the best eggs. I know that he has a 9-year-old daughter who's the same age as my daughter. I know her team, right? Like the sense of like, oh yeah, the egg guy that has the really pretty rainbow Easter eggs, right?
Right. Exactly.
And he sells that one because he only has 3 cartons every once a month.
Well, I think we need, more entrepreneurs like you who are consciously minded and thoughtful and mindful with why they're creating their business and what they're serving towards. So appreciate you and all the work that you're doing, and for people who have businesses that want to shop and gift more sustainably, how do they find you? How do they look up your business? Tell us how to get there.
Yeah, we're coolperx.com with an X, COOLPERX.com, and then we're Coolperx on all the social.
Okay, perfect. Well, I know that for my holiday shopping, I'm going to get on there and I'm going to try to do better at being sustainable and more thoughtful with my gifts. I think it's a good goal for the next month. Well, Lou, really appreciate the time and thank you, and best of luck. And if you ever come to Michigan, please look us up. Be more than happy to give you the 50-cent tour of the farm here.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Lou. Take care.
You too.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. You can find Everything Borrowed on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Show your support and drop a 5-star review to help more people find our channel. Don't forget to subscribe. Stay up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and everythingborrowedpodcast.com. EBP is produced by Chelsea Cox, Jason Brown, and Vox Adams. Edited and filmed by Nick Ferguson. Art is by Adam Yarborough. Everything Borrowed is an After Hours Media production. Copyright 2021.